Hey guys, this is DFD, aka Dark Frozen Depths, and this video was planned, I just never really got around to it, but I'm more or less going to talk quite a few things about the series I'm trying to come up with called Criss Chronicles, and I'm pretty sure that some of you have already seen things about it. There's the Eclipse Trio game that I've started working on. There's if you've been on this channel longer, the Sagas version, which is what I was originally going to go with for the first game, but I changed it up, especially considering the fact that there was a shift between VX Ace and MV, which took me a while, by the way. And in the case of that, that's where I more or less just scrapped the Sagas idea and just went with something completely new. I mean, why not? I was remaking everything. If I would have just continued off of where Sagas was at, I could have easily translated it over. But that's the thing with that. If you've really known about my channel, you've seen some of the music that I've come up with. That's been posted like long before I even started actually trying to make content on games and stuff. And then on top of that too is the fact that I also had started working on a story that ended up being 120 chapters. I may even do a part 2 to it. I don't know if I ever get around to it, because I sort of started a part 2, but I just never really started finishing it. But yeah, there's going to be links to all of that type of stuff. Somebody's even done let's play my demo as well, and they also gave quite a bit of feedback about it too, which a lot of it I can agree with. There's maybe a slight few points I don't necessarily agree with because I wanted things to be a certain way, but yeah, they more or less given a lot of very decent feedback, which I am actually taking into consideration. But that person is Brancliff, who did a lot of L-Sword videos and whatnot. I think he's migrating over to Maple Story last I've seen. And then on top of that too, there's also this one guy that's done videos deconstructing Goblin Slayer, in fact, because I thought it got a lot of unnecessary controversy. He breaks down basically how things should be told when you have like certain elements in certain stories. And of course, if you've played my game, I have monsters and stuff in there. But it's not just monsters. I want this element swords. So I'll have a link to that video in the description or comments as well. And then actually getting on point here, more or less, I've designed this so it's like a group trying to take over the world, and then there's the heroes. You've seen the main three. The heroes pretty much trying to stop them. Now, it kind of stems back to where the parents actually started seeing this start coming to play, because they used to be part of that group. And by the way, this is going to be spoilers, but I'm not trying to spoil too much either. But they more or less seen that group trying to rise to power or whatever. And originally they were okay with the idea, but then when they started seeing some corruption, then they started trying to fight against it. And they were able to do so in secret until a certain point, in which case it's pretty much been passed on to their kids. So that's where things are coming in for that one. But that's the thing. It's like I tried to deconstruct a lot of normal realism tropes and all that type of stuff, because the thing with that is that I want this story to be more realistic, basically. It's like I want stuff we can relate to, but still have some little fantasy settings or whatever. I mean, this is a case where it's like if you took like medieval, fantasy, futuristic, and mix it in with modern, more or less. And that's the whole thing with it. It's like I'm trying to mix in a whole bunch of different things, and I'm trying to make it seem more realistic, as if we had it in real life. Like, of course, there's going to be stuff like Luna's a cat girl, Haruki's a dark elf, Maya is a regular elf. Believe it or not, Terra's actually a mermaid. Rave's a dragon. You got different types of mythical stuff like that. You've also got humans like Kazuka, Kazuya, Narissa, stuff like that. There's of course fairies. There's there's monsters and all sorts of stuff. The aura spirits happen to be wolves and foxes. It's just a whole mix of stuff, and I'm trying to make it seem more realistic too, because let's also face this fact right here. I honestly think a lot of recent media doesn't really show enough realism in some things. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can enjoy quite a few things, but at the same time, it's like, you still, at the back of your mind, think, why? But that's more or less what I'm trying to get on this type of thing. Like, for instance, if you played the demo, well, it's really a beta, but if you played it, there's 2 fights where if you lose, you'll get an ending cutscene. And this is going to be a running thing in the actual game. Now, the thing about this is the fact that it's going to end up being pretty dark, but it does show a bit of realism in the whole fact. Now, in some cases, I just kind of like randomly mixed some stuff and ran with it, like the whole ending scene with Origa. That's like, it's something that could happen, but it may or may not. But then again, Origa is more or less obsessed with Kazuka, and she absolutely hates Kazuya, and eventually starts hating Narissa as well, which already starts to stem off of the first encounter. But the thing is, though, it's more to show the realism with that, because of course she wants Kazuka, she wants to take him by force if necessary, and of course, if you know about succubus, then yeah, or succubi as they're called for the plural form, then you already know what's going to go down with that one. So the ending scene more or less shows that, where she just tosses the other 2 to whoever and keeps Kazuka to herself, literally against his will. And realistically, that could happen. It's like, if you think about it, if succubi existed and if they really ran through and did whatever the hell they wanted, then they'll just openly do that type of stuff. I mean, Monster Girl Quest actually covered that pretty well, too. I mean, a whole freaking town was taken by them. I mean, granted, Luca had to fight back, like he's the main hero of that. Luca had to fight them off in order to actually free the townspeople from their grip, but it's like, realistically, that would happen. In the case of the succubi, it's their food. In the case of humans, it's their survival. Well, some things aren't necessarily there in the case of my world. It's like, yes, they can get nourishment from it, but they don't necessarily do it for that case. It's like, it'll be the same case for vampires too, because I'll have them in there as well. It's like, they can consume blood, and then on top of that, some things can weaken them more than others, like sunlight, but it's not going to necessarily kill them either. But the thing is, too, of course, you have monsters in the world. You got to try and fight to survive, of course. That's the main story of the whole thing anyways, fighting to survive. And naturally, this is something that isn't really shown too much either. And I kind of agree with that one guy's video. I forgot his name, but like I said, it was in the description where he deconstructed Goblin's Lair. But it definitely shows that quite well. It's like, I haven't decided on if I'm going to have a monster that can only reproduce with other races, but I do have a monster in there where if you lose that fight, you literally have a description of the cast getting eaten alive, literally. And the unfortunate thing is the fact that it also goes both ways. It's like, this thing is literally eating these 4 alive. 4 being a character you're supposed to help out at the time. But in the case of Narissa and Kazuya, they got killed off pretty quickly because it went head first. But Kazuka actually had to suffer because it went from the other end first. And it's dark, but it does have a lot of realism in it. It's like, no, somebody would actually have to go through that crap if that actually happened. So that's the whole thing with that. And that's what I'm really trying to get going through here, too. I mean, I've also got, like, for instance, the main antagonist. You know, it's the Origa Corporation, pretty much. Origa is also, like, the corporation's also named after Origa, who happens to be the daughter of the two running that corporation. She's going to end up being the next leader. But the thing is, it's like this: a group rising to power and then using said power to try and control things. Corruption does happen, literally, in real life, and this kind of sort of deconstructs it too. Because like I said, that group originally had some good ideas and whatnot, and then next thing you know, it just goes south because people become corrupt. And then a lot of them in there don't even question it, but a certain few do, and that's going to be a plot point later. But the thing is, it's like you have this group, a whole bunch of them that either blindly follow them or willingly follow them to a T. And then there's another group that's trying to rise to stop it. And then another little instance of realism too is the whole thing with the bloodlust syndrome and the aura forms. Now, they both more or less show two things that happen when somebody is deemed quote unquote special or different. Because it's also a realistic thing, and it's sad, but it's also true. Somebody that's seen to have a lot of knowledge or even a position of power or even can do something that others can't, one of two things usually does happen. They are either revered for it or they are feared for it. Now, when they're revered, it's like a lot of people suddenly hold them up on a pedestal out of nowhere and stuff like that. And in some cases, it can also seem pretty fake. And that's going to be covered in the series as well. But on the other end of the spectrum, somebody that's different or does something that others can't do sometimes is feared, and people get afraid of it. They try to avoid that person, even discriminate against it. And that's the whole thing with that too. I pretty much describe what the bloodlust forms, or the bloodlust syndrome, in fact, and the aura spirits are more or less basically because the aura spirits are kind of like guardian spirits that everybody is literally born with, but not everybody can draw them out. The ones that can, they're the ones that are viewed as like heroic or incredibly special and stuff like that. And naturally, of course, some people are going to want to try and get close to that sort of thing, so they can either be protected or use it to their advantage or something like that. That's more or less what I'm going for that side. It's like a confliction with that. And then the aura spirits also are their own characters as well, and I named them all after gemstones. Like, for instance, Kazuka has sapphire, Kazuya has turquoise, and those two also happen to be, well, they're not twins per se, but they're still sisters. But then there's the other end of the spectrum too, where it's like, yeah, it's viewed as a good thing, but there's still some that might come to try and abuse it. So they got to protect themselves from that as well in that sort of instance. And then on top of that, there's the bloodlust syndrome, which is viewed so badly that typically if you have the bloodlust syndrome and aura forms, you're still viewed as evil. But that's the whole thing. The bloodlust syndrome is viewed as evil. It's like, it's literally something that amplifies literally your bloodlust, where you're much more eager to fight, you're much more eager to destroy and kill things. You can control it, but a lot of people that had it really don't end up controlling themselves in the end, because it consistently grows in power, and with that said, it more or less eats away at you more, the stronger it can get. The only solution is to really get stronger with it, so you still maintain that control. Now, I'm not sure if I'll implement ways to actually remove said bloodlust syndrome or whatnot, but it's pretty much viewed if you're born with it, you're stuck with it. And it more or less is the case, because a lot of people that were born with it in universe don't really survive that long. That's where Kazuka and Kazuya are actually pretty fortunate, because they were known to have the bloodlust syndrome for a long time, and they still managed to survive. And that's a big plot point on it too. It's like, it was still a very, very hard and difficult struggle, because they even got kicked out of Picano, which is one of the first areas you visit, because of that. And that's a huge driving point. It's like people are so fearful of it that they're willing to have like 2 kids that really can't take care of themselves and they had to learn on their own, just get thrown out into the wilderness or whatever, and whatever happens to them happens. And even more so in some cases, people actually want them dead on the spot. That's part of the reason why there's a good handful of the members of the Orga Corporation actually trying to kill them. You see that first thing when you start the game, because they believe they're doing a good thing by getting rid of things that are just as bad, if not worse, than monsters. And whether they know the full truth or not is one thing, but they're still willing to fight that in order to quote-unquote protect themselves, and that's being used to the Orga Corporation's advantage, at least the leaders anyway. But there are still some people, like for instance the one that you're supposed to rescue around the Picano thing, where they don't view them as evil, they just view them as unfortunate. And some are still willing to support them, others, it's more like they're mentally or morally supporting them, but not physically doing it. But that's the whole thing with it. It just shuts you off from the world, more or less. And that's also the whole reason why that song I used in the preview is literally there, and I translated it as well, because the whole thing with that is the fact that the song translated pretty much describes the Bloodlust Syndrome in general. It's like a power that can corrupt you the more you use it. But at the same time, it also describes a little bit of the storyline where it's like Kazuka and Kazuya are both putting this together, and they're trying their hardest to help each other survive. I mean, on one hand, it's natural because they're twins. And any self-respecting family member would want to protect another one. But at the same time, they're more or less put in the situation, so they're trying to make the most of it, even though they're not always having such a good outlook on things and whatnot. I mean, they've gotten so used to things that by the time they even meet Narissa, they're already used to killing. So even though they still do feel some sort of remorse for it, they ultimately become a little numb to it. And that's the whole thing with that. So that's more or less what I'm trying to go for. I'm trying to make it realistic. I'm trying to give it a situation where it's like, okay, you might have experienced something close to this, because there's been people that's out there that's gotten bullied or whatever, treated wrongly because they may have had something different. And there's others that might have actually gotten revered for it, but feel like they've gotten used or some sort of setup for it. It's just how it is. It's like I've tried to make something relatable as well. And that's mainly what I'm trying to go for. But that's what the storyline with Eclipse Trio. Magia went somewhere completely different because of the simple fact that I was having a completely different concept at the time. And if you want to be honest, I've gone through so many different concepts where it's like, okay, what's the real story? Eclipse Trio is going to be the real story, because it's something I found that I really want to stick with. So I'm trying to like continue off of that. And then there's some spoiler related stuff in it too, but I've also got a little bit of a scenario description of what the full demo is going to have. And I haven't gotten around to actually doing too much more towards the game since I've released the beta, because I'm trying to like update RPG Maker and all this other stuff. Because if you want to be honest, I was using a free version of RPG Maker. I want to actually go buy it and support them, because it's a very good program. It's incredible, actually. It's like I didn't get a physical copy. I got it from somebody else, in fact. But the thing is, I literally want to go get one I actually paid for. It'll automatically update and all that too, because I plan on getting it through Steam. But that's the whole thing with that. It's like I want that updated. I want to try and build things from there. And this is honestly something like, it's something I came up with on a whim years ago, a long time ago in fact, but now it's like something I truly do want to continue, especially since I have gotten quite a bit more support on this lately. I mean, not really financially, but there's a lot of people that's actually like spreading word for me, giving me ideas, actually doing things like playing it and testing it out and stuff. I'm actually it's starting to pick up. And if you want to be honest, the view count on the beta demo is actually almost hit half my subscriber count. So that's pretty interesting to look at as well. And that's the main thing I'm trying to do. Is like I'm trying to spread word of this. I'm trying to get it out there, see what people's feedback is, because I've pretty much more or less got my vision on the storyline, but how the gameplay is and all of that, I want other people's suggestions. Like, should I make it easier in some parts? Should I make it harder? Should I change this? Should I change that? That's the whole reason why I want people to actually test it out and play it and whatnot. But, anyways, that's all for this video. Like I said, there's a lot I'm trying not to spoil or go through, but there's, like, anything I've mentioned, more or less, the game kind of hints to or actually flat out said. So, that's all I really got for that one. And I'm going to have a good list of stuff that you can actually look at too, where it's quite a list, in fact. There's been playthroughs I haven't finished on sagas, in which case I really don't care about at this point now. I still got to do a little bit more on the Eclipse Trio playthroughs, and that's going to be a future video as well, because I left off at around the Aqua Chapel part, and that's where there's a huge difficulty spike. Even for me, there's a difficulty spike, and I'm making it. Because the main thing I wanted is a challenge for this thing, and you can dumb down the difficulty if you want, but I want normal difficulty to actually be a challenge. But, and then there's harder difficulties too if people don't think it's enough of a challenge. But, yeah, eventually got to finish off the Eclipse Trio playthrough for the beta. And then on top of that too is the fact that I've also shown videos where it's like, okay, here's how some of the characters look and whatnot. If you actually look at the saga stuff and then look at the Eclipse Trio thing, you'll see just how different some of these characters actually came out. Eclipse Trio is actually the closest I wanted for this. And to be quite honest, the image that you've seen on screen this entire video is actually something I came up with for one of Narissa's designs. And RPG Maker came pretty close to it. There's like some changes I had to make, but RPG Maker came pretty close to it. But anyways, that's all for this video. Next video I'll probably make is definitely going to be a Kamihime Project one, so that's the thing with that. I mean, Kamihime Project's become my biggest game on this channel now. It started off with Elsword, and honestly, I still plan on doing some more Elsword videos, just not until we get the next new character, who's completely broken from what I've heard. And then I'm also trying to branch out to other stuff too, not just Kamihime Project and Flower Knight Girl, and not too many people even look at Flower Knight Girl, but there's, like, I can start doing Final Fantasy videos, I can start doing some of the other mobile games I've played. Like, I still haven't posted King's Raid. I'll do that eventually. That's going to happen within a week. But, yeah, expect more videos of other stuff, expect more Criss Chronicles videos as well. Like I said, there's quite a few links in the thing down there. Check those all out. If you want to play the game too, it's down there as well. Or at least a link to the video that will lead you to play the game. And then there's also like there's a huge chapter story of Magia if you want to enjoy something that's like same characters but different storyline. But anyways, that's all for this video, guys. Take care.